We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
Go on without me. Just go.
A good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Because I wouldn't give you 2 cents for all your fancy rules if behind them they didn't have a little bit of plain, ordinary, everyday kindness.
Life, finds a way.
Welcome to Silver Screen Biases, where we dig into critically acclaimed movies and evaluate the truth claims within it. I'm Nelson.
This is Jeff.
And I'm Sarah.
Tell us a bit about yourself, Sarah.
Well, I am a Christian.
Okay.
I've been a Christian for most of my life. A pretty young mom in the sense of a mother to a young...
At 13.
Yes. No. A mother of a young child, one on the way.
You're relatively young yourself.
Yes, yeah, relatively.
Yeah.
Younger than you guys, I guess, so that makes me young. Yeah, I'm Hispanic.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm from the United States, so that's always fun to
What
explain
flavor
to
of
people.
Hispanic are you?
Puerto Rican and Mexican, so
Puerto
two
Rican
flavors.
2 flavors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's always fun to answer the question, where are you? What are you?
What are you?
Do you guys watch? Do you guys watch New Girl?
Yeah.
No, I'm
No,
sorry.
okay. It's
Jeff.
like when Schmidt's trying to guess where Cece's from. Japanese? Jutlandias? Yeah,
I'm
it's
like, I'm
fantastic.
American, and they're like, okay, but I'm like, all right, I'll give you what you want. But yeah.
I want to real quickly on that because I know that whole kind of concept makes some people very passionate and other people very uncomfortable and defensive. My wife is Hispanic, does not look at all Hispanic, and when she tells Hispanic people that she's Hispanic, they tell her she's not. So it's not a uniquely Caucasian American habit. Like people are just like, no, you're not Hispanic. You're something else.
And she speaks fluent Spanish, and I don't. And so that's the funny thing is that people come to me. I'm like, no, you got to go to her because I'm not.
I remember the first time I met someone from South Africa, and they are completely Caucasian.
Yeah.
And I just stared at them. I remember just like, I was even rude about it. I just stared at them. I'm like,
you can't just
can't
ask
be
people
South
if they're
African.
African, Jeff.
like, and then they're like, we're predominantly white down there. I'm like,
People why they're white.
I didn't ask. It just came up in
They
conversation.
had a lot of public government policies to make sure
They
that
were on
were
staff with
predominantly
me
white.
at a different church, and it came up in conversation, and they just kind of threw it out. They're like, "Oh yeah, we're South African," and I'm just like, "Wait a second."
Smoke starts coming out
Yeah,
your ears.
yeah. And then I struggled for a second, but yeah. Anyways,
Tell us a bit more about yourself, Sarah. What are some of your biases? What do you assume is true about the world that people may or may not agree with?
Oh wow.
real easy question.
Yes. Yeah. I would say that there's a creator.
Okay.
Behind everything. That creator being God, a God who's personable, knowable, one that we can have a personal relationship with, not someone who's just kind of watching from a cloud in the sky. Mm-hmm. And with that, he sent his son to die for our sins, that everyone is disqualified from heaven based on sin, no matter what the sin is. So as different types of sinners, different levels of sinners, we all need Jesus. So that's kind of the 50,000 foot view. So I would definitely say that my main bias would be just my faith. Mm-hmm. I think obviously being the only woman at this table that gives me
that you know of.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't assume. A woman of color, but again, not someone who, it's not like I'm from Mexico or I'm from Puerto Rico, second generation in that sense. Yeah.
Okay. Are you political at all?
Oh, Nelson,
Easy question. Softball stuff.
Yes, yeah. I am. I mean, I definitely think that it's important to vote. I
Which
think
is tomorrow,
that,
by the way.
Yes, yeah. Unless
as
you
we're
really voted
as we're
like we
recording
did.
this episode, yeah, tomorrow's voting day.
Yes, I definitely think. I mean, I think
Tell
as
us how it went.
as spoiler alert. I think that as a Christian, it's very important to be involved in politics, particularly because I mean, and for wherever you live, right? But I think as Americans, we have the right to vote, and we have a responsibility to contribute to our communities in different ways, and so that we should be active in politics. It saddens me to see how politics is so polarized now, and I definitely think there's a lack of empathy there. But I am a firm believer in people critically thinking and being respectful to one another. And, we can disagree, but, are you voting,
Okay.
on what change you want to see, and we should advocate for change. So I would say I'm political.
Okay.
I don't get heated in politics. And I try to do as much objective research as I can. I don't like it when things are skewed or packaged in a way for me to tell me what to believe, I guess. So that's something
Whether that's left, right, or center.
Correct. Yeah. I just want as much of objectivity as possible to make a decision.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Would you say that your politics tend to lean more conservative or progressive?
I would say conservative. Yeah.
Okay. That's it for our hard bias questions. But I don't think often enough we pay much attention to our own biases, or at least we're aware of our own biases, and I think that that's a healthy thing, especially if we're going to be discussing the biases of the content we consume. We need to acknowledge that we have our own biases when we come to that, and so the things that upset us often is just because it doesn't agree with our bias, and the things that we like, it's often just because it does, and that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. Just, that's that. Welcome, Sarah. So excited to have you, our first guest on Silver Screen Biases. We're hoping to have lots more. We've already got some stuff planned. But before we get into today's episode, we're also very excited to announce a big change for us. We have our first advertiser. Something I'm very excited about. I actually went to them because it's a product I believe in so much. The Tuttle Twins. You can find the link in our show notes. Tuttle Twins makes children's books.
Can you spell that? Just
Tuttle.
There you go.
Twins. Yeah, they make children's books. They have noticed a trend in children's books that if it's not vapid, like the train goes choo-choo, that it tended to be very progressive and very biased content, and it was really hard for them to find stuff that had a message and was good for teaching how to read, but also good for teaching critical thinking skills, or how the world works, right? How people should treat each other. And so the main series, I think there's 12 books now, or they're announced their 12th book. The main series is for like early readers through to preteens.
Early readers being
like 6 and 7.
Okay.
My oldest reads them.
Yeah.
My middleest looks at the pictures appreciatively, and my youngest throws them around the house.
How do you consume these books?
I am illiterate, so I don't consume the books, but luckily they've converted a lot of those books into a TV show on YouTube as well.
Nelson puts the book under his pillow at night.
That's right. Just
absorbs
Osmosis.
So you can get the books. They've got infant books as well, like the ABC of Economics.
Stop.
And it's got Q is for quantitative easing.
Stop it. Wow.
But the toddler books are more of a joke. Their main line, it really is like develop your reading skills, but also develop your critical thinking skills, or
educate yourself.
Yeah,
I
educate
don't know.
yourself.
Quantitative economics doesn't sound like a joke to me. No.
It's no laughing matter. My middle child, Patrick, his favorite book in the series is the one that he calls the inflation monster. It is The Creature from Jekyll Island. And so they take this economic book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is in economic circles a very well-regarded book, and then they narrativize it, they novelize it, and they make it digestible for children. It's a book where the book goes a little bit different from the episode of the show. But basically, somebody's printing too many carnival tickets, and it's causing all the carnival prices to go up. And so the Tuttle Twins are trying to understand why. And it's very digestible for kids, but also for grown-ups, it's going to probably teach you something that you didn't know and you didn't learn in school. And I think it's really helpful for that. So yeah, they've got the toddler books, the preteen books. They've also got a teenage series. They just launched their History of America leading up to 1776. So America before America, basically. And that's a really much a hard-boiled history book. They've got a YouTube show that's a whole lot of fun. Strongly recommend that. And a podcast called How the World Works, which is like 15-minute segments, very child-friendly. So yeah, we're really excited to have them on board. You can find their affiliate link in the bottom or go to TuttleTwins.silverscreenbiases.com. And any purchases you make there, they will know that we sent you, and they'll thank us for it. So that's a way you can support the show as well as support your children's education.
And just in time for Christmas, too.
Just in time for Christmas.
Look at you guys.
Yeah.
Wow.
We were thinking.
I am excited.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. So that's advertising.
That's it. That's our episode, guys.
And we're so excited to have them.
This has been so much fun. Thank you guys for having me.
So, Jeff.
This week, this movie. Okay, I was excited about this one. Inside Out. Disney Pixar Inside Out 2015. This was a lovely experience. I'll get into more of that later. But just some stats going down. The director is Pete Docter and Ronnie Del Carmen. The rating is PG. And just giving some of the stats as far as where this falls in with critic reviews and stuff like that. It is 8.2 out of 10 on IMDb.
Okay.
Rotten Tomatoes is 98 critic, 89 audience.
Okay.
It is, as of recording this episode, 160th on the IMDb Top 250.
Okay. Is that the lowest we've covered so far?
No. Into the Wild was the lowest.
Oh, okay.
222.
All right.
Yeah. And it's not the highest. Psycho was the highest at 32. So we're right in the middle of what we've watched so far. Yeah. So that's the basic information of the movie. Huge cast. Mm-hmm. You got Amy Poehler. You got
Mindy
Kaling. You got two people from The Office.
Lewis Black playing Anger. What a perfect casting.
Yes.
If you're not familiar with this comedy, it's mostly angry screaming and yelling. It's very funny angry screaming and yelling.
It's on point. His stuff's on point. Yeah. And you've got Bill Hader, Richard Kind, it's great. And it's a bunch of cool cameos and stuff too as far as voice actors. And you've got the one that's in all the Pixar movies, Ratzenberger. I think that's how you say his name. Yeah.
What's he play?
At the end he is I should know this. I
don't know if I know this Easter egg.
Yeah, John Ratzenberger has a character in every Pixar movie.
Wow.
So he's the truck in the car. He's Kachow's, what's his, Lightning McQueen's truck. Yeah. He's the voice of the truck.
Oh.
He's
Pig.
The pig in Toy Stories.
Oh.
He is the caterpillar in A Bug's Life, right?
Is he?
He's the caterpillar, or he's
he's P.T. Flea.
He's P.T. Flea. You're right.
But yeah, he's in every single one.
Every single Pixar movie, he has a cameo, voice cameo.
Uh-huh.
But he's from Cheers. He's the dude from Cheers.
Cliff Clavin.
Yeah.
Yeah. For our young people who don't know who John Ratzenberger is, he's that guy from Cheers.
Yeah.
Or if you're just me, he's that guy from Pixar.
And another
Pixar movie.
So Cliff Clavin is a character on Cheers who is a postal worker, and also he has this bizarre habit of knowing random esoteric knowledge that nobody should know and nobody can fact check.
Yeah. But
does that sound a little familiar, Sarah?
Yeah. Very inviting. And then another cameo in this movie is a Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yes.
He plays mind worker cop Jake.
Way.
So he's in this. Yeah, Frank Oz, Rashida Jones, another Office, Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
So just it's
I like
fun.
her best in Freaks and Geeks, though.
Never seen Freaks and Geeks, which is a Judd Apatow series, right?
It is.
Yeah, Freaks
really
and
good.
Geeks. Judd Apatow. I'm a big fan of Judd Apatow. But yeah, so I've got a budget for you.
Nice.
Would you like to hear the budget?
Yeah.
Money,
Adjusted
money.
for inflation? I have it here.
Yeah, I was gonna say you do the adjusting. I just do the initial, very quick research.
Sure.
$175 million.
Yeah.
In production and development took about 5.5 years from start to.
I don't know.
Production
For a Pixar movie, I don't know if that's a lot or not.
I assume that they're years.
But this is by far the most expensive movie we've covered so far. $175 in 2015 dollars, adjusted for inflation, is $220 million today.
Yeah, it's a little bit.
Money gets cheaper real fast, doesn't it?
It's a little bit. But
we'll
talk about this
discuss what
soon,
causes that, but not this.
The value of this movie, though, I think inflates versus decreases. This movie, oh, Nelson,
Dad jokes.
Be here all week.
But yeah, so there's that stuff. I have some other production notes I'll throw in out, inside and out. Inside out. I'll throw in some nuggets throughout the evening. But yeah, that's the basic stuff to get us started.
Okay.
For Inside Out.
Was this any of our first time watching this?
No.
Is it a movie you've seen a lot?
Yes.
No.
Oh.
It is actually one of my least favorite Pixar movies, believe it or not. So it's so funny when you I would not this is probably maybe the third or fourth time that I've watched it.
Okay.
In comparison to like other Pixar movies, like Toy Story is a classic for me. Coco, I love for obvious reasons.
Because on the inside, you're a Mexican skeleton.
Right. Yes.
Both of those are on the top 250.
Half of me.
half Mexican skeleton.
Oh gosh, yeah, but yeah, so that's probably maybe my most important bias here is that I actually am not a very big fan.
So going into this, is this a movie that you dislike or simply not your favorite Pixar?
Yeah, just not a favorite. Okay. I will say that it got me again, the first time that I watched it. And I just rewatched it for the first time. I mean, besides like for this podcast.
Right.
Maybe earlier this year.
Okay.
Just with my daughter. Yeah. And was like, and was kind of like pausing it in and out and just finished it to finish it. But I'm like, yeah, I remember why I didn't love it. But then when I rewatched it, I'm like, oh, I'm getting the same feeling that I did when I watched it for the first time. Sure. But it's not something that I'm going to keep on in the background type of Pixar movie.
Yeah. I went into this. This is a Pixar movie that I dislike. I don't like this Pixar movie.
I actively
dislike
it.
I wish we had the time to get into those reasonings. But.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not the kind of show we do here. So yeah, this is a Pixar movie I actively dislike, and that's gonna.
You disliked it from the very beginning, or was it something that you realized down the road? You're like, wait a second, I strongly disagree with this movie. Like, so it's like, was there any part of the movie that you? I guess before we get into the dislikes, what do you like? About
so
it?
what I dislike about the movie is what the movie tells us is true about the world. And it's something that I've always disliked about this movie. Okay. Watching it this time, paying much more attention also to, casting and writing and directorial choices. I think it's a really great movie. I just really dislike the message. And I think with this movie, it's impossible to escape the message. And and that's why I dislike it. This is a movie I don't want to watch with my kids because I don't want my kids with these specific takeaways that we'll get into.
Interesting, yeah.
Yes. I'm a fan. I love it.
You actively like it.
I do. Like, I was excited about
it in your top 5 Pixar movies?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, I'm going to need a minute.
Especially because there's a lot now.
Yeah, at least 6.
You gotta cut one out.
You gotta cut one.
No, if I gave a legitimate time to think about, I wasn't prepared for this question, but just initially off the cuff, I don't think this would be in my top 5 Pixar movies.
Yeah. Would you put it in your top half of Pixar movies?
Yeah,
as a mental...
yeah, because there's definitely a couple of Pixar movies
like Cars 2 and 3.
Cars 2, Cars 3 is great.
Okay,
Cars 2 is rough. Cars 2 is really rough. The Good Dinosaur is not one I enjoy watching. It's that one.
I watched that one and I liked it a lot better the second time around than the
kid
first
got
time.
Stoned? That is fun.
Oh yeah,
I did forget about it. There were a lot of parts about that movie that I forgot, and I was like,
it's
"Yeah,
Lion King, but dinosaurs."
Like
it was just, it's a heavy movie. Like, it's a heavy topic.
When we get to the Lion King, which we will eventually, I will go into deep detail of why you're wrong. It's not Lion King.
I mean, that was just off the cuff. No. But yeah, we can talk about. But yeah, so I like most Pixar movies, so like it'd be hard for me to say what's in the bottom half.
Right.
Actually,
this is one you like.
I do like this, and I'm very intrigued. And Nelson, you and I have not talked about your thoughts about this movie before we record. So
right, all you know about this is that
you don't like it, and I'm actually very excited to have my likes challenge. So I'm very intrigued about our upcoming conversation here, because like maybe there's some things I'm missing, but like I liked, if I can go into this real quick, I liked the discussion of mental health. I think it's something that
mental health was boring and lame.
I like that.
Shame on you.
I like that the discussion was had or the topic was brought up. Like, and I don't, and I do agree with you. This movie very much clearly has an agenda. It's kind of easy to pick out the message it's setting up or a message it's setting up.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't think it was screaming a specific agenda. For me, it was just this kind of calming, like, hey, how are your emotions? You know, like I just kind of got this like out of body voice going, how are you feeling today, Jeff? Where's you? Like, what are the voices in your head saying right now? Like, we're like, so just
If you have voices in your head,
yeah,
you might need to speak with
do you have a number for me?
doctor.
Cool. Yeah, we'll talk
Some
about
kind of trained
that. So
professional.
I just liked it. It got
Your
me.
next affiliate.
Yeah. Which is why we're talking about better health.
Pew, pew, pew. So yeah, I just like it makes me internally think. Like it kind of helps me do a gut check on where Jeff is
Right.
in my season of life. And like I've watched this movie multiple times now in different seasons of life, pre being a dad, post being a dad, in the middle.
Both seasons of life.
Right, and then in the middle of trying to be a family,
Yeah.
so it struggles there. Like I've never moved geographically though,
Okay.
so for me, like that's one
You've
thing.
had career changes. And
I
that's
have had
very similar.
career changes, but I've never made a big move to where I couldn't relate to Riley or the family in that sense of like, I don't know what it's like to pick up everything and move and leave everyone. I lived in Columbus for a year, which is only an hour and a half from here. I was home every weekend, so I don't even count that of moving because I still had all my circle of friends.
Okay.
So like I've never experienced what Riley went through in this movie. But yeah, I like this movie and I appreciate the conversation of it.
Sarah, you've moved at least once that I can prove.
Yes.
Have you done a lot of moving?
I have actually. Yeah, my parents were both in the military.
Okay.
So moved from California to Maryland when I was 5.
Wow, across the whole.
Yeah, yep, and they were still in the military. So yeah, and I mean, my parents have gotten divorced, both remarried, like have gone through lots of
Big changes.
life changes. Yeah.
How
on
old
top
were you when
of
that happened?
6. Yeah, 6 when my parents got divorced. And then even then, like just moving around a lot, like between the two of them, into different houses. Stayed in the same school from the time that I was school age up until the 5th grade, and then made a big to us, like 2.5, 3 hour move into a different part of the state.
Right.
So totally different school system. It's not like I could finish elementary school and then at least go into a new time where everyone else is transitioning into a new school. But yeah, so that I would say that was pretty big for me.
Yeah.
Being around 10 years old and moving to a brand new school where, yeah, like I didn't know anyone and kind of restarting too, even in my family. So really big moves in my life to where I could at least empathize with Riley.
Right. I think we had like 4 moves before the 3rd grade. Big moves. So Ontario to Alberta, Alberta to Georgia, Georgia to New Brunswick, Canada. And that was the 3rd grade.
Georgia, like the United States.
Yeah. The state, not the country.
Okay. But that's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I went through a lot of moves at school age. I don't really remember much of them. From the 3rd grade through my first time through the 10th grade, I lived in New Brunswick and then moved to Ohio where I finished high school. Then I moved to Louisiana, then Honduras, then Guatemala, then back here. So I've moved a lot. And so I almost can't empathize with Riley because for me it's picking up and moving is not a big deal to me anymore.
You kind of want her to suck it up.
No, it's not even that.
No?
Like, no, it's just like, and it wasn't even. It's not like I think that she just needs to learn to deal with it. It's just that like I don't know I don't remember what those emotions are like because I haven't experienced those emotions since I was so young that it's irrelevant to me now.
And then it just became a part of your life too.
Yeah, yeah. And we're gonna start with you, Sarah. What were some of the minor themes that you saw through this movie?
Oh, yes. I love this question. I think one of, a sub theme of what I would say would be the main message of this film that I thought was interesting is the theme of pressure or expectation from outside sources, primarily being represented as like Riley's parents in this movie, right? Right from the very beginning, which also, again, as a mom of young kids, when Riley's like first experience with life is opening up her eyes and she's like not screaming her head off. I'm like, okay, this is not accurate to real life. But she laughs, right? And the first things that her parents say to her is, "Oh, aren't you our bundle of joy?" And her first emotion is joy. But then it kind of sets this narrative of Riley's life that you notice consistently comes up when she's talking to her parents through this move, right? Of like, where's my happy girl? Or, okay, you need
Be happy for dad.
Yes, be happy for dad, which I did not remember that. I was like, oh gosh. And now that I'm watching it as a parent, I'm like taking notes too, right? Of like, what expectations am I going to inadvertently put on my kids, right? But so I think it was that theme of expectation that's unrealistic. Because for Riley, she's silenced then, right? Okay, well, I'm supposed to be happy. I can't feel any other emotions. And then, of course, joy, not letting any of the other emotions, to be felt, especially sadness. And then by the end of that, it's resolved when Riley's finally able to feel sad and she cries. And then her parents finally open up and say, oh, you know what? We're sad too. Like, we miss these things about Minnesota, and they're sharing their grief, to where it's like, oh man, the whole entire conflict, right, could have been avoided had they not had these expectations on her, or had they been vulnerable and honest. So I think that was like a sub theme. Of the main message.
Even just to push back a little bit on some of the narrative there, the parents' expectations for Riley were not this is how you have to behave, right? It's kind of one of those things where like it's a subconscious expectation that Riley takes on to herself subconsciously, and so becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. So you would mention like you have to be conscious of that as a parent. I think on the other hand, though, we also need to be very forgiving with ourselves as parents and with our parents, right? Because those expectations happen so subconsciously and organically, right? Like, for example, I have an expectation on my kids that I'm aware that it's there, but like my daughter is very smart and she knows that I know she's smart. And so then there's a kind of a pressure then to be smart. But like if she does something that's not intelligent, I'm not disappointed or upset with her, but more often than not, she's smart, right? And then Patrick, more often than not, he's funny. Now, not all of his jokes land.
He's the best.
But
he's
owning it in right now.
He's owning it in.
I've been
more
there.
often than not,
I've been
funny.
there. Yeah.
Relatable.
Yeah. So I think that especially psychologists, right, are very quick to demonize the parents, like trying to figure out how your parents hurt you, right? Most of that hurt is unintentional and should be forgiven, not held to account.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But I think from the kid's perspective, though, right? Like they don't have the abilities to step out, step from outside of themselves to be able to see.
They don't have the maturity.
Right. And it's not until you become an adult and you can reflect on those things of like, oh man, like my
my parents were actually doing pretty good.
Yeah, like speaking from my experience of like looking back at my parents' divorce now, it's like it's not like my parents set out to like screw up their kids, It's not like they set out to have a terrible marriage and, like break up.
In fact, I'm sure they would have preferred not to have had a terrible marriage.
Right. Yes, exactly. And, but being able to see that now and to be forgiving as an adult of like, okay, like I can't go back and, change how I experienced that as a 6-year-old, but
Time machine parent trap.
Yeah, I wish. But yeah. So anyways, that's one of the themes that I saw was just kind of that expectation. To kind of behave one way or suppress, certain emotions.
Yeah.
No, I love talking to new people about movies because like in different perspectives, because like I never even picked up on that. Like I love this. This is great. It's nice having a third mic. I'm excited about this. I'm still dwelling on that. I don't have any initial comments on Sarah's. I have no rebuttal for that.
So in preparation for this episode, I read 2 articles about the movie. One written by a psychologist saying, yes, this movie nails exactly what emotional development is like for children. And then another one by 2 psychologists saying, no, this is not at all what emotional development is like.
It was so uncommon for psychologists to disagree.
Right. And so it was important to me that I read both sides. And one of the reasons I read This Is Why It All Works is because I don't like this movie because I think it's wrong about how emotions work. One thing that the other 2 psychologists pointed out, which is kind of something that I thought was funny, and I even have my notes here, I'm surprised that Riley's first emotion is joy and not fear. because children don't come out of the womb giggling.
Oh yeah, I will tell you that much is very true. No one is giggling in that moment.
No one's laughing. So it's weird to me that the baby's first emotion and predominant emotion is joy. Almost all human action is motivated predominantly by fear, and her first emotion would have been fear. So I found that an interesting narrative choice by the director or writer, and something that people way smarter than me and knowledgeable about psychology also pointed out.
See, psychology aside, I thought that it was interesting that joy was her first emotion. Just because I was like, oh, I feel like this is like the very first minor truth claim maybe in this movie of there is an inherent joy to life. Like to feel alive, to be alive. Yeah. And again, from a bias as a Christian, you know, that there's purpose to life, right? Like we are made in the image of God. Yeah. And so I thought that it was interesting. I'm like, so the mother side of me who has experienced birth is like rolling my eyes of like, okay, yeah, that's not happening. But then, you know, again, the silver screen bias prepper in me is like, oh, that's interesting that they would associate that very first emotion as joy being, you know, with life of like, this is my first memory. This is my first experience with the outside world, and I'm happy about it.
In defense of that moment, though, the baby is wrapped in a cloth and has the hat on. So at this point, the baby is cleaned up
and the center of attention.
Right. So like there could have been a moment where it was angry at first, but maybe they just didn't. Fearful at first. But yeah, it's like we do. It's not like right after birth, baby. Like we do see a cleaned up Riley at the beginning. So there is time in between. But yes, I do absolutely agree. That's not the first emotion that a baby feels, to my knowledge, from what I can remember when I was a baby.
From what I remember being an infant.
Real quick before we move on, I have some fun facts about this topic here that we've kind of touched on here. So I've got two for you right now. So this is all from IMDb. This is all public information. But according to the director Pete, each emotion is based on a shape, which this is not something I knew going into this round. Joy is based on a star. Sadness is a teardrop. Anger is a fire brick, which I don't know what a fire brick is. Fear is a raw nerve.
A brick on fire.
A brick on fire. And disgust is actually shaped after broccoli. So I thought
the director actually likes broccoli.
Correct. I do know that. Yeah. So and then fear is a raw nerve, like a nerve end or
Interesting.
Something. Yeah, that's a little more abstract than the rest of these. But then the one other one I wanted to add, just currently in this season of conversation, the writers actually had 27 different emotions that they were deciding on. So they didn't have these 5 right at the beginning. Joy, sadness, disgust, fear, and anger is what they decided on. But some of the other ones was surprise, pride, and trust that were actually, which some of them ended up making it into islands versus actual characters. But so Pride Island was
there was
one,
how many? 20.
And Trust Island was 27 different emotions were up.
It's really interesting
running
because in the first article I read, the one that's on Psychology Today, it's linked in the show notes. There are 6 scientifically validated universal emotions. So Paul Ekman is most known for his work with universal emotions as he traveled around the world and found that these 6 emotions were present in every culture. So it was all 5 of the ones there.
Okay.
And surprise.
It's so interesting because how is surprise an emotion?
I don't know. But
like I feel like that's a reaction.
These 6 things are found present in every culture and present themselves in the same way through the same facial expressions around the world. And it's his research that the show Lied to Me was based on. Do you guys remember that?
I'm not familiar with the show.
It was a guy that was an expert on micro expressions, and so he would interview people. And
that's fascinating.
It was a great show. Yeah. Strongly recommend it. But yeah, so it's interesting that they had 27 and they managed to pick 5 of 6 that are already backed by a broad amount of research.
I feel like surprise is just like a subcategory of like disgust. Like it's a reactive, like you're disgusted, or like, oh, I like this. You know, it's the same side, right? Yeah. Like I'm really surprised that surprise is one of them.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
What would it look like? Do you think?
What was surprise?
Like what color?
A balloon.
A balloon.
Or what would the shape of surprise be if they did?
Maybe that's
That's a
why
great question.
Maybe that's why they didn't do
Yeah.
it. They're like, I can't
An
figure out a shape for
explosion
this.
that's orange.
An exclamation mark, maybe? Like,
Oh yeah, that would work.
like
Or a interrobang, which no.
Oh yeah.
that's
Interrobang, that's the question mark and the exclamation together.
Yeah, interrobang, and then when it's upside down, it's like a naparatne.
Now you're just making up words.
Nope, that's a thing. I didn't make it up.
This sounds an awful like that guy from Cheers. You can fact check, Nelson.
Yeah, I'm just full of it.
Oh gosh, those were fun
Yeah.
facts.
Yeah,
Jeff.
yeah. All thanks to IMDb and my hard research that they did.
Of course.
So, yeah.
Yeah, being able to outsource our research to a bunch of other people is
Yeah,
great.
I mean, I give them full credit. I take no credit.
All right. Any other minor themes that you picked up on that you want to talk about, Jeff or Sarah?
Going back into it.
Major themes.
Well, this would probably go into the minor theme. Just it's something that I haven't. This is the first time watching this movie since becoming a parent, and I don't know if this one directly affected me because of that specific fact, but I do feel like I'm watching it with newer eyes. And my daughter is adopted. Mm-hmm. And so my wife and I have had endless conversations about the concept of nature versus nurture.
Yes.
And I feel like at the beginning of the movie, when you're meeting the emotions and they're kind of giving the setup of like how core memories are like which memories become core memories or which ones become just regular memories that go into
and how core memory shapes personality.
Right. I feel like there was I don't think it went on into the whole movie, but there was definitely a moment of conversation where it felt like there was this idea of like nature versus nurture in the fact of like what's impacting memories. Is it something that's genetically or generational, or is it something that's environmental?
Yeah.
And so I don't have a specific example. But nature versus nurture came to mind while watching, especially the first half of this movie, and just some of the dialogue that was going on, just some of the things that Riley was interacting with. Like, I mean, like the whole move would have been the removal of her nature, right? Mm-hmm. She'd been placed in a new nature, so like everything would have been up. So just I don't know. That's been on my mind pre-watching the movie, and so that was just something that I was kind of hypersensitive to.
Yeah.
But again, I don't have an 11-year-old daughter. I have a 14-month-old daughter. So
a beautiful 14-month-old daughter.
She's pretty great. Yeah. So just again, I think it's minor. I didn't see that theme throughout the movie, but I did get some of that essence at the beginning.
Yeah, it's certainly a major truth claim that recurs because Joy gets scared when they're in the like the memory data banks that any of these could be tainted with sadness,
right,
and that these will forever alter Riley's personality.
Right.
Sarah, your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I did think that was interesting of the kind of aha moment for Joy when she realizes that one of her core memories, like her joyful core memory, if she backed it up, it was actually out of something sad.
Yeah.
And then, obviously I think that's reflecting to Riley's ability to probably even cognitively see both, like have the tension of both being there. It is interesting. I don't know if I necessarily picked up on the nature versus nurture, but I know that that's a very hot topic. I was actually going to tease you too when you were talking about the two conflicting psychology articles.
The second one goes into a bit about nature versus nurture specifically. What you were going to say?
Oh, no. I was just going to say that I was going to tease about, like, I wonder what those psychologists, like, where they land on nature versus nurture type of thing, and how their own bias within the psychology, of it, how that impacted the way that they viewed the movie to say whether or not, this is how kids develop, emotionally, or it's not.
Yeah. So the first article, the first column, or however you want to call it, the first psychologist, she never commented on whether on long-term memory affecting personality. But the other two psychologists that wrote for Vox, they went into quite a bit of depth on it. And one of the things that they say is that our belief that memories influence our personality is kind of a feature of the fact that humans try to narrativize things. We like to look at our lives and look at past experiences to explain why we are the way we are today. But, and I'm going to read directly here, in fact, events that happen in our lives have remarkably little impact on our personalities. Twin studies suggest that personality traits are mostly fixed by genetics. In one extraordinary case, two twins, separated at birth, met years later only to discover that they were remarkably similar. Not just that they had similar fashion taste and a shared dislike for math, but they also both enjoyed far more unique, quote, pursuits, like sneezing when in the company of strangers and dipping their toast in coffee. Some traits, it seems, were destined to have. Take the same person, expose them to different environments, different experiences, and more likely than not, they'll come out with roughly the same desires and traits. Now, as you pointed out, Sarah, this is a bias of the psychologists, right? Because not all psychologists agree on this. Because the nature versus nurture argument is broad.
Yeah.
But
and it's hard to scientifically like give a definition to that too, because like it is a lot of it is abstract themes or assumptions. So like it's
and it always requires some amount of suspension of disbelief when you're dealing with the fantastical, which this movie is.
Yeah.
But it is either in passing in as a joke, it is making claims about where our personalities come from, how long-term memory is stored, that kind of stuff. The first psychologist actually says that the more often you access a memory, the more likely it's to become a long-term memory. And she compares it to you hide something in the forest. And there's a well-worn...
We've all been there, right?
Yeah. And there's a well-worn trail to get to that thing. But if nobody goes on that trail for several years, then it's not that the thing is no longer there. It's still there. Just the trail there is lost, so you can't find it anymore. So your memories, your long-term memories, according to this first psychologist, still very much there. Now, the other two psychologists point out, and this is something that's well documented as well, the more often you access a memory, it corrupts that memory over time.
And like we manipulate it?
Yeah, so intentionally and otherwise, every time you remember something, you misremember it slightly. And so over time, memories that you access a lot are wildly different from how they first were, which is important for legal stuff because eyewitness testimony is one of the most influential for juries, but it's actually one of the least reliable.
I think they touched on that in Only Murders in the Building. I think I remember hearing about that now.
They definitely talked about it in the Serial podcast. If you ever listen to Serial season 1, which was like it's like the breakthrough of the kind of like true crime.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, she basically digs up a case from the 90s where this teenage boy is convicted of murdering his girlfriend. But I mean, now that she's doing this research years later, like she's asking, okay, Jeff, where were you on Thursday, May 13th at 2 p.m.? I think I was in the library because that's what I did every, Thursday after 2. Like, it's crazy. But yeah, that's interesting, Nelson.
Yeah.
I did think this was something that wasn't a theme, but I wish that they would have explored a little bit at the end. So this is kind of jumping around in the movie.
We allow that.
Thank you. I needed that permission.
Not only do we allow that, but if we didn't allow it, we are one of the... We do it constantly.
But when she gets the idea to run away, and so it's based out of anger, right? Anger says, oh, I've got this idea. He keeps coming back to it, and he sticks it in the control panel, and she accepts it, right? So then the light bulb gets sucked into the control panel, and he says, okay, she took it, and we can't take it back. So... That was interesting to me because that implies that there's something other than the emotions that is really at the control panel in Riley's brain, right? That there's actually a disconnect, that there's some other level, whether that's a conscience or like who she really is or something. But again, it's based out of anger and they can't take it back once she decides to accept it and act on it. Then later, when she's finally able to experience sadness, she rejects the idea, gets off the bus, and then the light bulb pops out of the control panel, and sadness takes it out, and she just, lets her feel her feelings and have a good cry. But I just thought that was so interesting because I'm like, okay, so which is it then? Is it the emotions that are truly driving the person, which I think gets into the bigger claim of this movie, which is why I think that you don't like it.
That's exactly why I don't like it. And I'm really glad you brought this up because I'd never noticed that. I remember it, but I didn't notice that.
So could it be implying that like Riley does have the final say over her emotion? Or like
else.
Yeah, like there's not like a god figure that's been being introduced, maybe Bing Bong. No. But yeah, I've never noticed it. Like
I hadn't
why
either.
couldn't they?
I'm really glad you brought that up because I've seen this movie twice. Once a few years ago and once a couple weeks ago. And it's the reason I don't like this movie is this claim within the movie, or the seeming claim, that emotions control not just how we react, but how we act. Because Riley is not autonomous. Her emotions dictate how she behaves. We say the same thing with her parents and with the boy later in the movie, as well as the dog and the cat. It's that emotions, emotions control us is kind of the claim of the movie. Right. I felt, and I really reject that. And the two psychologists also reject that. And they don't say it directly. They make a different comparison. But are you familiar with Freud's id, ego, and superego?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with Freud's id, ego, and superego?
I think that's a Ben and Jerry's flavor.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sarah, from memory.
It's one of those core center ones, actually, is what it is. Yeah. That there's different layers to it. Yes, Nelson.
I'm going to test your memory,
okay,
Sarah.
Please.
What is id, ego, and superego?
Okay, so the id would be like who you, like the base version of who you are. Okay. So that would be like what's just like the, again, if I can step away from my bias as a Christian, that would be the basic personality, like your base personality as like a barbaric human, right? Okay. Like what you are just naturally driven by.
What some people call lizard brain.
I did not know that, but so id. It's also a very useful, just fun fact for those of you who are Scrabble fans, to use in a Scrabble game because
ID,
it can.
For those of you that don't know it.
Yes, so mark that down. It'll get you some points in Scrabble. Yeah. What id, ego,
that's the kind of
super...
hot tips that we bring to you, our listeners.
That's what I bring. To
that's
the
what
table.
Sarah brings to the table.
I'm terrible at
It's great Scrabble words.
But I always keep that in the back of my head of this is a 2-letter word that I know is a scientific thing. Id, ego. So ego would be a step outside of that. And this is where the memory gets a little fuzzy. But this is taking me back to my AP Psych.
Yeah.
When I was 17, we were talking before getting ready for this podcast about how I had watched Clockwork Orange for my Psych class.
Oh,
so this is what I'm remembering. So this is over 10 years later.
That movie for 17-years-olds?
Okay.
You know, at the end of our last episode, I joked that I was looking forward to seeing how Clockwork Orange would have to do with Inside Out, and here it is.
Honestly, I was banking. I was praying to God, don't let this come back up, because I've noticed that in every single episode. Like, we're
never going to escape it. We'll never escape it.
And here I am playing into that narrative. So that's the id. Ego would be a step outside of that, where there's like some consciousness to it. More of like your personality, like your thoughts, and then super ego kind of being you being able to like metacognitively like think about what you're thinking.
Okay.
Is how I would loosely remember it now at 28 years old from when I learned it when I was 17.
I can never remember the relationship between the three, except that id is raw instinct. And the rest of it I can't remember. So I had to look it up in preparation for these. Yeah, so id is your raw instinct. And so these 5 emotions represent Riley's id. But what we don't see is her ego or superego.
So you would say it's her id factor.
I wouldn't.
No.
I'm not great at this whole improv thing.
The id factor.
So,
Anywho.
Here's the Wikipedia breakdown quickly. The id is the set of uncoordinated instinctual desires. The superego plays the critical and moralizing role, and the ego is the organized, realistic agent that mediates between the instinctual desires of the id and the critical superego.
Yeah, that's what I said, right?
Yeah, almost word for word.
Yeah, I don't know why you had to repeat that.
Yeah, I know. You were so concise, it seemed silly for me to... So what we don't see of Riley is her ego or superego, and based on how this is briefly explained, that light bulb being rejected or saying she accepted it, that would be her ego, right? Mm-hmm. Some interesting things about the relationship between ego and id is that, superego and id, is that the more tired you are, the less likely you are to engage critical thinking and more likely you are to give over to instinctual desires. But it doesn't have exclusively to do with that. People sometimes consciously choose to exist on id, and at other times when they would typically be critical thinkers and they're fully well rested and there's nothing else there, they're fully id. So we don't understand why one takes over the other. We just know that it does. And there's one really important study that I only ever reference it jokingly, but there was this interesting study that you only have so much willpower to make decisions within a day, and that's engaging your superego. And so there's a lot of like these 7 habits of highly effective people type people who intentionally take as much decision-making power off their plate. So for example, Lex Friedman, he's a brilliant guy. He wears the same thing every day because then he doesn't have to decide what he's going to wear. And that's one less decision that will exhaust his decision-making ability for the day. So he's able to engage his super ego on things of more value to him. All of that to say, that's my biggest gripe with this movie. And I've seen the movie twice, right? So I haven't given it a whole lot of chance. But if Jeff, who's seen it a ton of times, missed it, I've seen it a couple times, missed it. You've seen it several times and only caught it this time. If it's so easy for us to miss that, my children definitely aren't going to catch that. And so the message of your emotions control you and not the other way around is what's going to come through. And that's my biggest issue with this movie.
That's interesting because I would say when I was done watching the movie and I'm thinking, okay, what is a major truth claim? And I really think that there's only one, right? Like, I didn't necessarily get that it was our emotions control us so much as the importance of like we have to be able to feel all of our emotions. I think when you flesh that out, I would reject it because of what you're saying, Nelson, of I shouldn't be dictated by my emotions.
Right.
I should feel them. And that's something that I've had to learn as I've gotten older. And I'm very curious to hear more from you, Jeff. But it's just like, I have to be able to feel all of them.
Yeah. Full range, full spectrum of emotion.
Yes.
That was my main takeaway. Especially going in this final time watching it it wasn't. And I don't disagree with you, Nelson. It's like I do see your side, and I do bringing that to light. That does make sense, and I would agree with that as far as how we personally view our emotions and stuff, and how they do control or don't control us.
Right.
But my biggest takeaway, and I would say it was my takeaway watching it back in the day, and it was my takeaway watching it again, was just this idea of like the importance of being open to. How do I want to verbalize this? Being open to letting the emotions have a place. Emotion, all the emotions are healthy in a respectful time and location, and it's learning how to make sure they're in their place. So like I never once picked up on the who's controlling who, but for me what the takeaway was like, wow, man, I've been sad, but have I ever been sad but also joyful at the same time?
Complex emotions.
Yeah. And it's like, so for me, that was the thing. And so at the end, when they're showing all these memories, multicolored memories, I'm like, I can relate to that. Like emotion isn't single faceted, like it is multifaceted and stuff. And oddly enough, this has come up in therapy before, like, cause I'm in therapy and I'm loving it. BetterHelp, by the way, we gotta get them as a sponsor. But,
if you're listening.
But just this idea of like, I'm a very joyful person, just naturally. I have a very easy tendency when I'm around people, just even if I'm having a hard time, I don't want anyone else to be having a hard time either. So if I want other people to be joyful, even if I'm not. But I've been learning, as in my own personal self-study, you can be joyful and sad at the same time.
Right.
You can't be happy and sad at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because happy.
That'll preach,
joy,
Jeffrey. That'll preach.
Happy and joy are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what this movie does well,
Revelation.
climax of the movie, all emotions have a place if you use them the right way. If you use them the right way, not if they use you the right way. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciated that, and that's the part that still impacts me. Is that moment where she's looking at when Riley's in the tree, and it's the blue moment, it's the sad moment,
Yeah.
and then Joy scrolls over. She's like, "Wait, there's two emotions in this memory." Like I don't know. That's for me that moment, and then the breakdown of her and the parents and stuff, and they just That's what gets me. And I cried at this movie. Like, I'll be the first to admit, like, this movie gets me emotionally. There's vulnerability. And that's what I appreciated. That was my big takeaway.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I used to help in this after school running program for young girls, like elementary school age girls. It's helping them learn life skills, but also like connect with their bodies through running, right? But one of our lessons was based in emotions, and what like our curriculum that we couldn't also stray from. Like we had to follow this curriculum or else. One of the like things that we had to teach was emotions aren't good or bad.
They just are.
They just are. Yeah. Which I remember like thinking about that when I read that lesson for the first time. And I ended up coaching 2 seasons with this program. So 2 different sets of girls for the most part. But I remember first reading that, I was just like, how do I feel about that claim that I'm, teaching to these girls? And I ended up like being able to agree with it that, yeah, like to your point, Jeff, like emotions aren't good or bad. They just are. And you need to be able to feel them. You need to be able to have a time and a space. And that's what I appreciated about this movie. And again, I wonder too, this movie also, like, maybe I also don't like it because I'm just like, I want to go and read more about psychology, like, because I can't really have an informed opinion of this movie. But I think that's what I appreciated about it, was just that you have to feel all of them. And for Riley, and even in my own life experience too, as I'm thinking of like, yeah, how did I experience emotion when I was younger? Because again, hindsight is 20/20, and you look back at your childhood with like deeper understanding than what you probably were actually experiencing it as, because now you have the words to be able to like say how you truly were feeling.
Right. Again,
Riley's ability to go from all of these like singular colored memories to, by the end, you're having these multicolored marble memories of just you're realizing that you can experience both, which I think is something that you learn as an adult. But I wonder if cognitively, like in your brain, you're actually more able to experience those as you grow older, because you gain more of that insight that you're not, so one colored. But yeah. What are you thinking, Nelson? You're looking around.
Yeah. So I think that the ability to appreciate and experience a full spectrum of emotions is a mark of maturity. And whenever I hear the word maturity, it always brings me to first chapter of James, which says, take joy whenever you face troubles of many kind, for the testing of your faith develops perseverance, which must finish its work for you to be mature and complete, not lacking anything.
Boom.
What I was thinking is, like, how does that connect here? How does understanding and appreciating complex emotions connect with take joy when you face troubles of many kinds? And I would say that, in this situation, it was a big mark of maturity for Riley that she chose to experience sadness rather than run from it and be angry. And the result, and that is a trial, right? And that's a big trial for her, was, new school, new community. Hockey's going to look different. Friends are going to look different. Her relationship with her parents is going to look different, because now dad's got at this new tech startup and he's going to be real busy. So like a lot of change for her. So that's a big trial for her. But out of that is an opportunity for maturity if she embraces it.
Yeah.
So
see, now I feel like, now as I'm listening to you say that, I feel like I'm switching to your camp of not liking this movie, because I'm like, but does she really choose?
Yeah.
Like she
That's
doesn't.
why I don't like this movie.
How about, okay, so I know both of you personally, and I've worked alongside of you in different ways and stuff. And my challenge to you, or my question to you would be like, is this movie good for conversation? Like not to just put on in the background and have a child absorb it and then you just go on with your day. But could this be a movie that you watch with your child intently and then be like, okay, let's talk about Riley. You're 11 years old now. Let's talk about, have you ever experienced this? And what did you see Riley do? Like I think it's a good conversation starter.
Yeah.
Like I almost like it because there's things in it I disagree about, especially after having this conversation. Like I do disagree with some of the things that it presents, but I think it's a great movie to challenge a growing mind with that right parental guidance to walk through what they just watched.
Oh, for sure. And I think that even if you were to do a subset podcast on Disney movies, particularly Pixar movies, I feel like they would have to be in different categories now.
Yeah.
Because Pixar especially has introduced more mature themes, right? Like Turning Red, which we've talked about before.
Clockwork Orange.
What's it? Stop it. If they make that into that's like 2080 coming out. But I feel like Inside Out was probably, as I'm thinking about it, I guess maybe Finding Nemo with the thought of Nemo telling Marlin, I hate you. Yeah. And going through that single parent kind of trauma. I feel like Inside Out is kind of the first big Pixar movie that it's like, okay, now we're no longer just watching these things to watch them. Like, we're going to start conversations because of it. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, I'm going through the list right now, and I think you're right. It's either I would maybe so Monsters Inc. was 2001.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that came out before.
I don't think there was anything heavy in Monsters Inc.
I don't think so.
Finding Nemo was 2003.
It's the first one that isn't explicitly a kids movie.
Correct.
Yeah, like I would say there's for sure an age range that you would have to be able to watch Inside Out and talk about it, you know.
So
like
when I watched this recently, this is the first one that I watched with my kids and asked their opinions on.
Nice.
Floyd, our youngest, he's 2, I think. I'm really bad with my kids.
Was he the one that suggested the Freud?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I said to him, I was like, "What's that thing in?" And he's like, "Ego, super ego, Dad."
Come on, Dad.
No, I'm really bad at remembering my kids' ages, and that's bad parenting. But his takeaway was that the scary clown was scary. What his feedback on the movie?
I mean, he's not wrong.
But he liked the movie, and he wanted to keep watching.
Did you dig a little deeper about like why he was attracted to the movie? Like what was the things that stimulated his imagination?
He thought it was funny.
Okay,
and
I would agree with that. It's
a lot of fun, bright colors.
Oh yeah, the colors are amazing.
It's a visually stunning movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, and if you look at some of the other notes that I was looking through, like the details, like Pixar, they're incredible. Like the Hall of Memory, or like just like it's meant to look like the cerebral cortex. Like it's just like there's very small things that I picked up this time around just because like I just appreciate the detail.
Yeah.
The train of thought. Like just like abstract memory. Like that whole scene when they're going through abstract thought and then they're breaking down. I was like, this is beautiful. Like there's some very fun artistic things that they visualized that was fun. I think it's a fun movie.
And then Patrick, he's 5. His feedback, he really liked the movie, but his big takeaway is, I feel bad for Riley.
Oh, okay.
So for him, it was an opportunity to explore empathy and discuss that. And then Sophia, she's 8, had the most mature takeaway, which is, this is a direct quote, "Most people think that the best way to live life is to be happy, but I think this movie is trying to show us that at some parts of life, the best way to live life is to be sad." Told you, she's smart.
She'll be on our next episode.
Yeah.
Why did you ask me to be here tonight? We need to bring Sophie here. Wow.
Yeah, she's a smart
Sophie
cookie.
knows her Disney too. Like that girl won the Disney sing-along that we did.
That's right, she did at the daddy-daughter dance.
That's right. She knew every lyric to every song, and I was proud.
She's a smart cookie. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps our takeaway from the major and minor themes. Last kind of wrap-up thing, and we're going to start with Sarah again. Would you put this in your top 250? No?
No, I would not.
Okay.
Personally, no. I agree that it's an important conversation starter.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I can...
Yeah, just real quickly, name your top 250.
Yeah.
So we can verify that.
You got my email saying to prepare for that, right?
Right. I have my list. Let me shuffle his papers. No, I was actually very surprised to see that it was on the top 250. And then it made me
I am
curious.
too. And especially to be in the middle of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and then to see other Disney movies that are on it.
And a handful of Pixar, too. It's not the only Pixar movie in the top
Toy
250.
Story's up there.
Yeah.
Incredibles, I think.
Coco's up there.
I think
which-
Incredibles is in top 250.
That would make sense.
Oh,
I hope it is.
I don't
It's
know.
one of my favorite Pixar.
I don't know if it is. But yeah, I was kind of surprised. I wouldn't put it in my top.
What about you, Jeff?
I've probably said this in previous episodes. I don't know what my top 250 would be. I don't know if I can list 250 movies.
Well, let's start.
So I know that it's so I guess I would read it as, would I watch this again? Yes. Would I watch it with my family? Yes. If it's not on my top 250, it would still definitely be on my rewatch list.
Okay.
From multiple reasons. Visually, like the soundtrack's fun. Like it's cinematically, it's a fun project, and it's a good conversation starter. It's a good one. I mean, I'm in youth ministry. Sarah, I know you've worked in youth ministry. Nelson, you've been a youth. Like,
You've been a youth.
Like
that was one of them ones.
These are one of these movies. It's there's nothing in it that you can't show anyone.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like to the point of like just be aware there's a scene. Like there's nothing in it that's inappropriate.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff in it that's worth talking about, and I think there's a value to that. So I don't know if it's in my personal for entertainment purposes in my top 250, but I would rewatch it and I would recommend it. That answers your next question.
Yeah.
I would recommend this.
And so what are those next questions? Because I don't have them.
Yeah. Would you recommend this movie?
I would recommend it. Yeah, I would. Because again, I think it is a great conversation starter. I think the general like sniff of the main theme being that we should be able to feel all of our emotions, I think is a valid point. It's when you delve into what exactly that looks like of, are we controlled by our emotions? Do the emotions have the final say? Is there something deeper? Which, yes, there is. And especially if you're a Christian, then you have the Holy Spirit guiding you as well, which needs to trump those emotions, right?
Right.
Not that you can't feel them. You know, there's a time and place for everything under the sun. But I think that it prompts great conversation. So yes, I would recommend it.
Yeah. Would you recommend this, Nelson?
I think it's a powerful conversation tool for kids if they're old enough.
Right.
There's a lot of Disney and Pixar movies that I can confidently put it on and walk away, knowing that what my kid's about to watch is not going to give them a corrupt understanding of how the world is.
Right.
This is not one of those movies.
Yeah.
This movie, it's far too easy to have the takeaway that emotions control us. And I don't want my kids thinking that emotions control them. So in that regard, like in that narrow subcategory of movies that I can put on for my kid and walk away, no. Mm-hmm. But do I recommend this? I think so. If I never see this movie again, it won't bother me. And I have no intention to watch it for at least 5 years, because 5 years is enough that my kids will have a dramatically different take on it.
We're going to do a rewatch podcast of all the movies that we've watched.
Re-review.
We're going to re-review. Yeah.
But no, I think overall it's a beautiful movie. I think it's really well put together. I just don't like that one thing. And that one thing is a big thing.
Yeah, an inescapable thing.
Now, they are making a sequel.
Yes, I had that information.
Yeah, they heard that.
Ready for it.
They were looking into our private text messages, found out that we were going to be doing this episode, and decided to put together a sequel movie. And I'm really hoping that in the sequel, it does discuss more about critical thinking and how that affects our emotions and how we can control our emotions.
Well, we know the one thing about the movie.
What's that?
That puberty button gets pushed.
Oh.
They said at D23 that it's going to be following, essentially picking up.
So
right
then
where
critical
this left
thinking
off.
definitely won't be in the movie.
It's going.
That's when the id really comes out.
Real
So
lizard
it's
brain.
going to be picking up right after this movie ended.
Yeah.
Okay.
And going into puberty.
Yeah, the one line that it has is follow Riley in her teenage years encountering new emotions. So it will be interesting.
Yeah.
It's just the Red Panda movie again.
Basically.
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
But-
It's still in San Francisco too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wait,
no, it was in
turning out it's
Canada.
Toronto.
Yeah, you should know this,
Vancouver.
Nelson.
One of those Canadian countries, states.
Which
whatever.
I'm bummed you didn't like this movie because of hockey. You know, I figured like
That's the thing
you
I
have
like
to
the
like
most
everything. Was it an accurate hockey depiction?
The brief moments of hockey were very accurate to what hockey is. Yeah.
Awesome. Has it aged well? We have two more questions here. Has it aged well?
It's been 7 years.
It's been 1 week.
No, 7 years.
I think there's a whole other level of aging. Has it aged well? Yes.
Yeah.
But I think there are a lot of other conversations that come with this movie now in 2022.
Like?
Just things that I think this was something that I didn't know whether or not I was reading into, and then I actually went and looked to see what the director had said. But Riley's emotions are a mix of genders. And then when you look at the dinner table scene with her mom and her dad, her mom's main emotion is
women.
sadness,
All female.
and it's all looks
female
like a
cast.
mom. Dad's main emotion is anger. They're all male, and so I'm like,
and the teenage boy, it's all fear.
well, yeah.
And
it's all boys.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know if I'm reading into this.
Riley's a gender neutral name.
Right, exactly. And so then I looked up what the director had said, and he's like, no, it's simply for clarity and for comedy, to have gone through what 4 times 3 is, or no, 5 times 3, 15. There are 5 different emotions.
5.
Yeah, 5 emotions.
And then 3 people at the dinner table.
Yeah.
15,
Sorry, baby brain math is just not.
Okay.
But
So it was for
anyways,
simplicity.
yes, we can distinctly see we're in mom's head, we're in dad's head. And I also thought this was another thing that this was a trivia that I read on IMDb, but mom's primary emotion being sadness was actually deeper and was empathy. And then dad's was anger, but
More
it wasn't just
complex
anger, it was
emotions.
protectiveness. So anyways, that was something that I also found interesting. But anyways, I think that, again, watching through 2022 eyes,
Yeah.
I think that's how this movie has aged differently. I think
And it'll be really interesting to see if they do anything with that in the sequel, especially given that recent Disney releases have leaned more into more progressive politics.
so that
But
was
then
something.
it won't release in China, so.
That was something that that was something that I thought the director, said nope, it was just simply for clarity. But
He
I
actually
think
said explicitly, I don't like transsexuals.
no, he did not. But I think if you get onto any Reddit thread,
course.
you can obviously read into any Disney movie for sure.
The Reddit
But
experts.
I think
Actually, speaking of Redditors, there's one thing that we didn't comment on. How does this movie connect to the Pixar universe? Because all the movies are supposed to adjust.
So there is a Pixar verse. I don't know. There's YouTube videos you can watch. So have you heard about this, Sarah?
no, and that's
There's-
so funny because I pride myself on Disney.
There is a fan
We should play
theory.
some Disney
I'll
scenes
send you a video. I'll send you a YouTube video. There's a fan theory that all specifically Pixar films, not the shorts, but the films, are all connected in a single timeline.
Interesting.
Yeah. And every time a movie comes out, there's all these new YouTubers that put out how does this one fit in? How does this one fit in?
And the short answer is they don't.
They don't, but they make them fit in.
yes,
because
yeah.
because
Well,
there's
that's-
there's
Lots of loving bears.
there's
and up.
there's a rumor that the
right,
old
yeah,
lady in Brave is Boo.
Yeah.
The old lady.
The old
in
the witch in Brave that has all the wood dolls is Boo because she's a time traveler. It's I'll send you the video.
The reason they say it's Boo is because one of these sculptures is of Sully.
Correct, because there's always the Pixar Easter eggs. There's
Right,
the
right,
ball,
right.
There's the
Pizza
truck.
Planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I do love Pizza Planet.
but yeah. So there's
Never
that,
been.
it's the Pixar verse. And Lightyear, when Lightyear came out, which is the most recent Pixar movie.
Which is a movie within the
Correct.
universe.
It's a fictional movie that it's the movie that the character was based off of.
Right.
So it's a fictional character.
Yeah.
They were trying this one's easy. It's a movie in a movie.
Done.
Yeah. So the Pixar verse. I will send you a video.
Yeah,
it's a fun deep
We'll
dive.
put it in the
Link
because
it.
then the other one, the one with the aliens. They're not the aliens. It's Chris Pratt and Tom Holland.
Onward.
Onward. That one takes place on a different planet because now there was the whole thing of how do unicorns exist when in an age where the dinosaurs have already extinct and Wally's got us on. It's abstract, but you'd appreciate it. So I'll send you a video.
Put your tinfoil hats on, people.
Yes.
Anything else for us?
I had one note about something. We can go into this. It's well, how much are we over time?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's then.
Sorry, guys.
We haven't discussed this before, but we may have to just have Sarah be on for all of our Pixar movies. For you listeners, we can't guarantee that'll happen. We don't
we
know when
would
the
love
next.
to have her back.
But yeah, we will definitely love to have you. You've been great.
Usually I have to edit out a lot of just awkward silence where we stare at each other, but there hasn't been any.
Nelson and I like to stare into each other's eyes, and it's a lot easier not to when there's another
set of eyes.
Yeah. So,
Never once have they made eye contact with me, just so you guys know.
Yeah.
All right, so that actually does it for us this week. Next week, we'll be joined by our friend Ben to discuss my favorite Christmas movie, Die Hard. There's 2 movies in the IMDb Top 250 that are Christmas movies, and we're going to be covering Die Hard first. We have a new segment that we're introducing this week. For movies that Jeff or I haven't seen or haven't seen in a long time, we're going to watch the trailer, and then from the trailer, make a guess at what the plot is. And then the beginning of our next week's episode, we'll discuss how close we got to that. This was suggested by one of the listeners, and we thought it was a great idea and a great potential for fun. Previously, we were actually avoiding watching trailers to not spoil anything, but this seemed like more fun. So we're going to watch a trailer. Sarah's also going to weigh in on what she thinks Die Hard is about. Sarah, how long has it been since you've seen Die Hard?
Oh, we watch it every year. So.
Oh, okay. Then you can't, actually. You can't. Yeah. I haven't seen it in several years. Jeff hasn't seen it in several years. When I say it's my favorite Christmas movie, that's a lie. My favorite Christmas movie is Gremlins. But Jeff and I are going to watch Die Hard. The next thing you'll hear is us saying what we think the movie's about based on the trailer. All right, so we just finished watching the trailer for Die Hard. And I got to say, it looks way dumber than I remember. And also, like, if I were to have seen that trailer, I wouldn't have gone to see the movie. Like, it looks so dumb.
So, this movie, I mean, it's 1988.
Yeah.
I was negative a year old.
Yeah.
I feel, I don't know. I like the way, I appreciate the nostalgic thing of it. I would go see it.
I laughed all the way through
I
it.
would go see it.
But, like, all right. Like,
it definitely doesn't seem...
Let's say you see
hard,
that
like, it doesn't seem BA about it anymore. Like, it just seems cheesy.
But if you saw that trailer today, like a new movie coming out,
yeah,
and you see that trailer, like, I'm not going to see that.
I would assume it's on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah, it looks like a really bad B movie.
Yeah.
Now, the plot.
Okay, the plot.
From memory and from this, it's Christmas. He's home to see his, I believe, ex-wife, but it doesn't really clarify in the trailer.
No, in the trailer, yeah. And there's a child.
Terrorists attack to steal money.
Yeah. Severus Snape
and his cohorts.
His cohorts. One of them is blonde, so it could be Malfoy.
Urkel's next door neighbor.
Yeah.
Shows up and he's going to retire.
He's a cop and everything.
Yeah.
He's always a cop.
The police don't go in because there's armed terrorists.
Right.
So the police only defend you when there's no guns involved, I guess.
It's out of their jurisdiction.
But luckily there's a guy in who happens to have one handgun and a can-do attitude.
And a walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
In a white tee that does not give up.
Anyway, so yeah, it looks way dumber than I remember. But now also going over the plot out loud, it's way dumber than I remember. Now, this is a movie that Sarah watches every year.
Because it's my husband's favorite Christmas movie.
Yeah. So yeah, look forward to that next time, 2 weeks from now. We'll have our buddy Ben on to discuss Die Hard.
Die Hard. Thank you for listening. Appreciate all of you. Appreciate you, Sarah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Super fun.
Absolutely. It's been great. The water you served us was delicious.
And my fancy carafe.
Yeah.
And the Tuttle Twins. I'm excited to look into that.
Tuttle Twins.
That's not even me. Just, they're not paying me to say that. Just so you know, I am genuinely excited.
We will once you hit the affiliate link.
Yeah.
So if you would like to pay Sarah some money for this episode, hit the affiliate link.
Christmas is coming up, guys. Help a girl out.
For your children, your grandchildren, your nieces and nephews. It really is a great series.
Sounds like it.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it.
That's it. Thanks.
We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening. We had a great time putting this together for you.
To join the conversation, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Silver Screen Biases.
And on Twitter at Screen Biases.
We believe in value for value, so if you found value in our show, we ask you to consider supporting us.
Links to our social media and support can be found in the show notes.